And this is our part 2 about development to deployment of a web application in Python. And this is the part 1 where I talked about the development and started with the database side and deployment side. And today I'm going to cover the complete cycle, including the database, its integration, and accessing the database, and how the persistence happens. And here, yeah, I basically do the web development, and I do mentoring in Python for the beginners. And also I do data analysis using Python and Excel. During my free time, I also do participate in the community as a health and fitness enthusiast. Now, we are next moving to the giving quick overview of part 1. If you have not attended, and this is the agenda for the series, use cases of Python, and tools, libraries, database required to build these applications that I'm going to explain today, and applications, what and how, walkthrough of the code and deployment, and Q&A if you have any questions. We can take up that eventually. If you are new to Python, these are the use cases, what kind of applications we can build using Python. And the projects I'm going to talk about today is one CRUD application and a quiz web application. And these are the tools I have used for this application: Python, Django, and SQLite. And deployment platforms we have quite available today are Heroku, Gitpod, Netlify, and Firebase. And today we are talking about using Heroku, that is an open source platform through which we can deploy our applications, especially when you are building a resume, right? You have to present some work. That's when I came up with these webinars. During my initial days, I had those challenges. It's quite easy. You get tons of resources to develop locally. But coming to deployment, that's when you can present it to the outside world, what you have done your work, right? So that's when that is the good use to put the open source platforms to good use, to showcase your work. Once you do in the local development, how we can present it to the outside world. It could be in terms of especially the resume building, and even in terms of if you're doing consultancy. Even sometimes clients, I had that experience. Client asked me, can I see your portfolio? These tools helped me to present my work to the client, and even for my resume during my initial days. And this is the one of the screenshot of application I'm going to walk through today. And this is when you click on each of these tile, general knowledge, geography, Python, food, STEM, or sport, that respective, for example, if you have clicked on general knowledge tile, this will take you to that page displaying the quizzes, and the user can answer. And this is another screenshot to navigate between the pages. And this is the second application that I'm going to walk through about the CRUD application, where this is about students registry scenario, like an organization. It could be a school or institutions or a university where they need a registry to enter into their database. Basically, it involves the CRUD actions: create, read, update, and delete. And this is a page to add a student record. And today this is part 2, where I will explain about the database admin portal, its access and connection to the database. Now, this full stack applications, this is quite well demanding role in these days, especially the companies and my personal experience. They're asking for both experience in front end and back end, right? So it makes a very good element that creating full stack application, at least if not high level application, to beginner to intermediate application to begin with, right? In the front end, where we have the HTML, that is what web browsers will be able to display onto the web page, and CSS, that is for the styling. Sorry, and these are the web browsers. These are the components of front end, what will be seen by the end user. And next comes the layer backend. Backend, where it involves several components like backend language that can communicate to the database. Because HTML cannot directly communicate to the database, we need to have an intermediate language, that is backend language, to talk to the database. Here we are using Python to talk to the database, to retrieve and fetch, post data to the database. It's where our application is storing the data. And also backend involves obviously the server. Django uses Unicorn server, especially for the production environment. And for the development purpose, it does uses another server called WSGI server. It is a lightweight server written in Python itself. Web server gateway interface. Coming to the production, we have to configure our application with the Unicorn. And next, the third layer, database, where it can have the databases such as SQLite, Postgres, and even MySQL. Here for this series, we are talking through the SQLite and its configurations. Now, coming to the Python and databases, we have quite a few options, SQL and NoSQL. We can configure our applications depending on the requirements, either configure with MySQL or SQLite or Postgres. And also we have option to work with, configure our Python to the NoSQL databases such as MongoDB or Firebase. These are very good combination to build a very good, decent, scalable full stack applications. Yeah. So this is for one of the applications, database admin portal, how it looks. I will show in the screen how it can be accessed, how it can be performed with the CRUD actions. And once you add the data from the UI, how you can access it in the database. And once you add something in the database, how it will be displayed onto the UI. This is the database admin portal for another application. And now these are the main commands we need to up and running the application. Especially in Python application, it is a very good practice that you create a virtual environment first, so that if you have multiple projects and more than one version of Python, it makes it a lot easier to keep the dependencies you have used for one project organized. And if tomorrow, if you are changing dependency version, to avoid even the dependency conflicts. For application 1, you have used one version. For application 2, you have used another version. So it makes it a lot easier to keep the versions compatible and individual to each project. So it makes a lot good practice to create a virtual environment first for the Python project. And then you have to activate that Python virtual environment using these commands. By the way, OS X is for Mac platform if you are using, and Windows for Windows platform you are using. Especially creating virtual environment and activating the virtual environment, right? There is a little difference in the syntax. So that's why I have put these separate commands for both platforms. And next, once you create the virtual environment and activate the virtual environment, you have to start installing the dependencies. For example, pip install Django. It is a common command for both the platforms. And then make sure you run the server to confirm that the basic framework code base wireframe is working, right? And then you can install other dependencies such as Gunica, for example, especially for the production. And then create a Django project using a Django admin start project and the name you give Django project's name. And then you create a Django application using this statement, this syntax, and you can access the admin portal using this localhost URL. And now one more point to remember is if you're using Python 3.3 version and above, you will get, there is a package called VN that is a standard inbuilt module. You don't have to explicitly install using the third-party library virtual N. 3.3 and above, it comes with VN module. This is the link for the slides you can access here, and these are the link to access CRUD app that I have hosted in Heroku, and quiz app that I have hosted in Heroku. You can access these applications, and yeah, now we can move on to the code. If you want to view these applications, I can put it in the chat. And yeah, this link I will post it shortly. Now, let's look at the screen. Can someone please confirm you're able to see my screen? Sure. So this is the Python student registry code. When you create a Django project, that will come up with the set of files that is already created for you, right? And in this, for deployment, I have made some tweaks. As you know, when you're deploying to the platform, for example, Heroku or Netlify or any other platform, each platform, they have their specific configurations, right? Sometimes it's when you're deploying it, definitely there will be challenges. Sometimes you have to make a lot of changes. It's not that you go to one link and you get fix for all the errors you will get during the deployment. And the very 3 files we compulsory need to deploy Python projects to the Heroku platform if you're using that as a deployment platform. That is, one is runtime.txt, requirements.txt, and proc file, these files. In the requirements, you do these dependencies needs to be mentioned. If you are coming from JavaScript background, you would be aware that package.json, it is similar to that, requirements.txt, wherein it contains the list of dependencies and their respective versions. And in the runtime.txt, you are going to mention which Python version you have used for the project. And in the proc file, this is where the Heroku platform users, okay, you are using the Unicorn server for the production, and also it sees, okay, this is the application name, right? This will be read by the Heroku, the hosting platform. Coming to the structure of the code, this is the root folder. Here, basically, when you create a Django project, 2 files will be created. One is a root directory of the project. Within that, you will have again subfolder of two subfolders, that is for project, and one is next is to create app. Django apps. Basically, project is a collection of apps. That's how you organize the individual segments of the application. For example, here, and when the first time URL you make a request in the web browser, that would hit the URL, that is urls.py. urls.py is this one. When the request is made, it will be, this file will be read to ensure all these routes, and okay, this path is related to which function. Basically, the each page, it's all about functions, right? In the view template, it's all about functions. For each page, you would create a function in the views.py. I'm going to explain that in a minute. And for this path, you would look at this view function. It's all about function. Through the function, we are going to define which path is connected to which component. And this is the path is connected to this one for editing. This path is for inserting, and this path is for updating, and this path is for deleting. These are the views. Once the request hits the URL, from there it will be mapped to that respective view. This is where will be taken next. For example, this is the default path. When the user clicks on the home page, this is what the view should be rendered. That is this one, right? And if when the user clicks on create page, view will be mapped to this function, record insert. What this function is doing, right? It is basically the user is entering in the form, and that is getting persisted to the database. Here you can see you are defining, okay, it has to be post, and then you are connecting to the module, and then you are saying, okay, get me all these parameters, column names, right? And then get the values what user has entered. These are basically to collect the user entered values and assign them to a variable that I am going to add it to the database, save it to the database. And then for this path, look at this function. It will be get mapped to this function. What this function does? This function basically helps to edit the chosen record. Likewise, for each path will be connected to that respective function. And then once it is mapped to that respective function, based on the function what it does, it will be mapped to the models, that is database. Then it would reach to models.py to talk to that respective database. Here I have created the database students, and with the column names, name, email address, contact, gender, right? And that's how the Django structure, when the request is made in the web browser, that's how it travels from the urls.py to views.py and then to models.py. And then models.py basically retrieves and sends data to and fro to the views.py. And then finally, it will be rendered onto the web page through the template. Templates are basically HTML files. We will be having here. This is how we can categorize and organize our folder. This is the index file, that is the landing page. And this is how, using interpolations, you fetch data from the database. And this is the template for editing page. And this is the template for creating page. And then we have three requirements, right? Talk file requirements, txt. These are the basically ones we need while deploying. Once you have done everything, all of your developments, and you have tested in your other couple more browsers in your machine, and then you are ready to deploy it. That's when you have to these 3 files are prerequisites for deploying onto the Heroku platform. And now these are the commands, right? I tried and did this handbook to what statement you need to do sequentially. And next we have the application ready and everything is fine, and app is running locally. Now you are ready to present it to the outside world. What you have done, right? It's baby, it's your child. What you have done, you want to present it for various scenarios. Now next step is deploying the application. Here there are voices platforms that help us to see our web application and ideas in action, right? And then some of the platforms, as I mentioned, Heroku, Gitpod, Netlify, and Firebase, and there are many more. And today we are highlighting on Heroku. That's the platform I have used to deploy these applications. And what are these actually? Because Gunikarn is one dependency that needs to be installed, which is a prerequisite to host it on the Heroku. How do you install pip install Gunikarn? And how do you create requirements.txt with simple syntax, that is Python -m pip install -r requirements.txt, and then hit enter. Requirements.txt file will be created for you. And then coming to the deployment continuation and proc file, this will be read by the Heroku to check its production server, which one has been configured, and the application name, as I showed you how this proc file looks, right? This is how it looks. This is what it should be containing. And runtime txt, where you have to mention the version of the Python you have used for the application. And to deploy it onto the Heroku, the prerequisite is Heroku CLI tool that you need to install. How do you install? Through the npm package. Npm install -g Heroku. -g is for globally. You have to please make sure you have to install Heroku CLI tool globally, not like within the virtual environment. No, it has to be installed globally. And then to verify that, okay, it's been successfully installed, you would enter Heroku space -- version to ensure that it's been installed successfully. If it is installed successfully with this command, it will show you the version of Heroku you are using. And then you would log in. If you are new to the Heroku, I'm giving this overview, and then I will walk through in the web pages. And next, you would log into the Heroku, and you will create the project. And then you would assign the project to the Heroku's Git. For example, you don't have to upload a virtual environment folder to the Heroku. Only thing is, only the files you need is these app files and these 3 requirements, and rest of the mandatory files will be done by Heroku for you. And then how do you check in your code to the Heroku for it to pick it up and deploy it onto its designated project, right? The standard Git commands, you would check Git status to add everything, and message while committing, and you say Git push Heroku master. Whereas with Git, we say Git push -u origin main. Here we say Git push Heroku master. And then these are additional resources. If you are interested, you can read through them. Now, looking at, say, okay, this is how the Heroku looks. This is my homepage. I have a few of these projects deployed. And in that, this is the one project I have deployed. And it also shows in a high level, okay, you are using the version of Heroku and which language. And this is what that application is. right? And here, when you walk into this application, a tiny information about what this application is as a part of user experience. And these are the tiles, and when you click on this, it will display the general knowledge category quizzes, and these are the list of quizzes. You would select randomly, just select that will give you the feedback as well. Once you make sure it's all working, then you can start pushing them, checking them to the Heroku, and you click for that. It will give you the feedback, and also say if your answer is correct. If your answer is wrong, it will tell you which answer it is supposed to be, right? For each question wise also it will give you the feedback, and at the end overall also it will give you the feedback saying that this was you selected, it was selected by you, but actual answer is here. Actual answer will be given to the below under its respective quiz, and this is the one. This is just a overview of how the application is. And then geography, if you want to use, and it's the same thing. And next, to move on to the next style, Python category, and next is food, and so on. And if you want to navigate from the home page, you can click on the home page, right? This is the one I deployed using Heroku. Another part, right? This is basically about settings for the database configurations. Before you check in the code to the Heroku gate, you have to make sure certain elements has to be configured within the settings.py, right? Settings.py will be created under Python Django project. Two different applications. This is Python quiz application. This is the student registry. Because I ran into the challenges of production, I had to configure both the projects differently. In a way, it was really good for me to realize what, in which scenario, what sort of changes is required for the production environment, right? Here, basically, before you change your structure of the folder for the deployment, this is how the standard structure provided by the Django. In this settings.py, you have to configure certain things before you push it to the Heroku Git. So installed apps, definitely you have to add your app name. That is your app name. That is this one, PyQuiz portal app. You have to register with the settings.py. Next. And here I have used databases SQLite. This comes, by default with the Django. And then you would do these ones. This field, you have to ensure it is existing. And this is the static, this is the path for the static URL. You have to ensure this is existing. And then here, two different things I have done. For a couple of categories, I'm fetching it from the JSON file. And for a couple of categories, I'm fetching data onto the UI from database directly. I was experimenting few things. So because with JSON file, we are working on an API, right? API series where we are going to add API layer in between the front end and the backend layer. So what happens when you add API layer, the data will be communicated to the API, and then API communicates to the database. Here what's happening is front end is communicating to the database. So for that series, I was working on this categorizing, and it was very good exercise, to be honest. And I can walk through, in the views.py, we can make out if you are fetching data from the JSON file, what syntax needs to be configured. If you are fetching data from the database, what syntax to be configured. For example, for the home page, landing page, right? I'm fetching data from the database. For this general knowledge page, I'm fetching data from the database. You can make out here. And this is I'm fetching from the JSON file. Because that is how you configure if you are fetching data from the file. And you have to say, okay, onto which template you are assigning this data, right? And then this is for geographical questions quiz. I'm fetching data from the JSON file. And these are from the database. You can make out here. I will show you the configurations made, right? This is the one. This is how you define the tables for each quiz. I have categorized, say I have some 5 to 6 categories. For each category, I have individual tables. I will show you in the portal in a minute. Okay, and with open, I have used this JSON as file and load it to this variable, and that variable of this object I'm assigning to this key, and this key will be used in the template to fetch data from this variable. This is content food. This is the structure how I have done. One second, I will show you. That is food, right? The food category. Yeah. Okay. This is the object in which I have stored data. It's a collection of objects. It is basically an array of JSON objects. These are the one the column names. So this is how I have done the combination of fetching data from the JSON and the database both in a single application. And next, let's look at the portal, right? And this is the local host, and now I want to access its this is, one second. Yeah, this is the admin portal for quiz application, right? And yeah, you have to log in back. After a while, it will start logging out for you automatically if you don't use it for some time. This is, I'm just trying to retrieve the thing. Okay, for local host, this is admin, and right, this is how you access database. The best part of, one of the best part of Django is, by default, it will provide you the portal, admin portal, right? You don't have to build it from the scratch. And this is, if you just hit enter for this one, right? This is the default landing page, it will take you there. And whereas if you do this, right, just localhost /admin, it will take you to the admin portal. Here you can start creating these ones. When when I execute these files, right, these, especially here, this is what this code does, creating these tables for me, right? And here, if you go there, you can see this is the general knowledge category title and the brief. In the code, if you see which part of the code doing that. General category here, geo category, this one. Where did general category? Okay, these are the common table categories, right? For example, say I will take another example. Here, by the way, using this UI, you can even create the another category using this UI interface. Say, for example, geo category info, right? This one, this block, this code block does this function, right? Category title, category brief, that one. Yeah, this category info, this block does this one. This is for the general knowledge. Likewise, for the table also, for example, sports, this one, right? This is how I have fed each question in the database. This gets rendered onto the web page. This is how you access database. And even you can see who are the users. Each of your tables you can see. And this is the database. In this database, these are the tables I have created. And also you go to these quizzes, and here you click on one of the question, and using this interface you can even add another quiz. And this is how you configure the data persistence between the UI layer and the database layer. And also you could see, okay, not necessarily you can connect the UI to the database. You can also fetch data from the JSON file, and eventually you can make that into API layer. And now this is the student registry, right, for another application. Before I move on to this, showing another scenario of connecting database to the UI using Python. Do you have any questions, anyone? Feel free to ask any questions you have in the Q&A or in the chats. Yes, the database is SQLite. And say, for example, if you are building any resume and you want to use other databases like Postgres, it is another good combination used for Postgres and Python. Feel free to connect with me on the LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to help you with the configurations and deployment with the Heroku. I have done quite a few on that. If you need help, I'm happy to help you. And why did we use Django.com for that? I didn't get your question. Where is the Django.com? And this is my LinkedIn profile. If you want to connect, or even if you post a message in the Slack, either way Slack or LinkedIn, either way, I'm happy to help you with the deployment if you're looking for one. Are you saying SQLite? On Heroku. Yes, with Heroku platform, you can deploy your application configured with SQLite, even Postgres. Only thing is in the settings.py. Settings.py, which portion changes? Settings.py. This part will be updated with Postgres credentials. And a couple more configurations you would need to be executed. Any other questions you have before I can show you another scenario with the students registry? In which scenarios we use JSON file and load data? Well, it really depends on your requirements. So definitely, and also it depends on the scale of the application, right? If you are looking at building the scalable application, certainly JSON may not be the best solution. It is for this scale of application, and we are working on the API series. So I just took that up to initially start with JSON file to ensure that the data persistence is happening. For that, I did that. Other than that, if you are really looking at like intermediate scale, definitely the database needs to be required. This is for this scale of application is absolutely fine. So in reality, when you are doing the real-time applications, right? So using the JSON for the production, it's not advisable, because definitely when you are working on enterprise applications, it will be scalable applications first of all. So for the scalable applications, don't use JSON. Just for these learning purpose, or for these scale applications, for your reference, you can definitely use. And okay, wait, I'm confused. Are you using SQLite or Postgres on Heroku? On Heroku, I'm using SQLite. Where is the database stored? Just now I showed you that portal, right? One second before I move on to the next question. This is where the data will be stored. Let me come back from the first. This is the local host, right? This is the server. This is how default I want to see my landing page. With this URL you would see. I want to access my database. This is the URL you would use. In the presentation, right? I will show you in the presentation. Here, this is to access the database. This is the link you would use to access the database, and where in this admin portal, data is stored. Database is created and data is stored based on how you have categorized, organized your data to get stored in form of tables, structured SQL. Yeah, this is where the database is stored, database, and these are the tables. For the student registry, we are looking at database. It hosted on SQLite. For both, for my local host and the platform hosting, that is Heroku hosting, I have used SQLite. How was that link created? Which link? Are you asking about Django link? If you're asking about Django link, access to the database. No, this is what Django provides, that link. You don't have to create it explicitly. When you use the local host and /, you would put the admin. That's it. This link has been configured, pre-configured. Okay, you don't have to create this link explicitly. You have your URL, and you would put /, and admin. That's how the Django is created, and it provides the database access for the portal. Coming to the this one, right? For example, here, where is it? See, not necessarily, right? See, this is the one I have hosted in the Heroku. I had previously logged in, so it is taking that for me. Okay. So this is the Heroku I have logged in, and you just put /admin. This has been pre-configured by Django for you. And say, for example, this is the hosted one, right? I'm just trying to retrieve my credentials. So yeah. And then let's move on to this students registry. This is the scenario I explained. And before I do that, I'm running 2 Python applications, right? I'm running 2 Python applications. Obviously, they both requires 2 different ports. So by default for this one, I have taken 8000. That is the default port provided by the Django. And if you want to run another application, obviously it has to be in the different port. For that, I have set 8080 by using this syntax in the terminal, is in the terminal or CMD. If you are using Mac, in the terminal, you would do that. If you are using Windows, you would do that. Even with the inbuilt terminal, you can do that, right? And this is the student registry. Say I will click on add student button, and it will take me to the form that user can enter. For example, this is the I enter okay, new user, new.user at academy.com, or I would say uni.com, and I would say residential road, main road, some test data, and I would say 123 something, and say insert record. Okay, it could be okay. That's because these one I have made it compulsory to enter the data, right? The page you saw, the error page, that requires for user to get better information. There is something room for improvement there. That is the next level of development, right? These are the kind of things you need to check enough time before you push it on to the Heroku. This specific folder, I have not pushed it onto the Heroku because I know that that needs to be fixed, right? So unless you fill all these form, database does not store it, right? So that feedback you have to give it in the this form as a part of user experience. And then if you see you got the feedback, the record new user is saved successfully. I will go to my home page, new user, it's been entered here. Now let me look at the database. I will refresh my page because it is quite some time. I will log in again. This is my local host. Okay. Right. You give your credentials. Now we can see new user. Just now this is the what I entered just now. Right. And now I want to edit it. I will make this uppercase. And then to make sure the changes are visible. And I will click on update record. It gives you the feedback. Student named new user's record has been updated successfully. And now we can check for its persistence. You can check for its persistence. You can see it's been updated here, university. Right, and here also using this interface also you can add the records that will be reflected in the UI. But coming to the large scale applications, definitely depending on the SQLite, you have to move on to other databases like Postgres or MySQL. That's when even the scale, the scenario you're working, and type of application or project you're doing, product you're doing, it definitely counts the tech stack, right? This is the demoing purpose and learning purpose. This is how we start initially. Okay, SQLite is for this. Okay, let me start Postgres or MySQL directly. No, it doesn't work like that. You start from SQLite and then you move on to configuring Postgres or MySQL. I myself, came across quite a few challenges when I configured to Postgres, especially locally. You don't find that challenging. When you're deploying it to the production, then you will know why shifting directly to the bigger database makes it more challenging, because obviously in the Heroku, you have to configure quite a lot of things for Postgres. What do you say? The partitions, whether you configure Postgres or not, by default, Heroku will help you to partition the allocate the memory for Postgres by default. That is one of the best part with the Heroku platform, right? You don't have to explicitly mention to partition the database partition for Postgres database. And then this is how it is. And if you want to delete it, it will give you the feedback saying that, okay, it will ask you whether you want to delete it or not. I would say yes. And you can see it's get reflected. It will get reflected. These are the kind of challenges you come across. So because I did not, I had to add another line of code to make sure it will be persisted. That was not added, right? And then you go to the students. And see, the test user is still there, but in the UI, it's gone now. Though that error was there, that needs to be fixed at the configuration level. Next. Do you have any other questions before moving on to the next segment? Yeah, thank you, Larry. Yes. Any questions with respect to the students' registry? Okay, one more thing I wanted to tell you about configurations part, right? Definitely these are the customizable thing. If you notice here, the structure of the folder for this and this slightly changes because of the partitions, how sometimes Heroku does based on that and based on the errors you'd have got during the deployment steps, right? So yeah, this is the models.py for quiz, and here what are the different changes, right? Here, when for students registry, particularly for this CRED scenario, I had to restructure this folder for students registry. If you notice, this structure both are deployed. This the challenges of deployment, right? And this structure is that is PyQuiz, a quiz project. This structure is different from these CRUD applications, and both of these are deployed, right? Sometimes it does throw the challenges. I had to install another package called Django Heroku to deploy it to the Heroku, and then obviously register the application. And then this is the SQLite. Here you can make out which database I'm using in the settings PY. And this is another challenge I had. You have to add this path for Heroku to create it for you, right? You don't have to create yourself and then add it to the Heroku, but these are the ones created by Heroku for you. The main prerequisites you need are the app and these 3 files you need. And these are the certain things you have to keep in mind that while deploying to the platforms, these are certain challenges you come across. The standard ones, does this work the same way for any application? The standard ones like the three files prerequisites, that is standard for any application you do. And if you want to deploy to the Heroku, they are the standards. But coming to the structure of the folder, it depends on what kind of error you got during you are deploying it. And if you, and if you're also 2 things, if you're also looking at Python with MongoDB, right? This was another session we did. You can, if you're interested, you can check this link. And then, yeah, any other questions? This is the one where I used both combination of JSON and database. If you look at this one, right? Yeah, in this application, I have used jQuery also. This is how we would use jQuery with Django. You would put all the CSS images, JS in the static folder. And this is how the HTML files will be categorized. The Django picks up the HTML files from the templates folder. And this is the admin.py, very essential part where you have to register each of your table in this admin. This admin is nothing but this. That's how we have to register your tables database with admin py, and Django picks up, okay, this table has been registered with this. Now I can store the table and its content in admin URL. It is a similar way of navigating between, first request when you make for the Django URL, it goes to urls.py. From there, it goes to views.py to that respective function component, and then it goes to the models.py. That sequential movement depending on the request made by the user. And then this is where we configure all the routes. And feel free to join our Slack. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Yeah, thank you, Laurie. Definitely. First, you have to develop locally and make sure it is working. What usually I do is, okay, I do testing in my Chrome, and then also before I deploy, I'll make sure it is working in at least other two browsers, either Firefox or Edge or Safari, depending on the which OS I'm working on. And then definitely make sure there are certain files, just certain files you need to add to the Heroku Git, and then you follow these commands to deploy it to the Heroku. And I can show you the Heroku how it is, right? For one of the thing, if you're especially if you go here and if you check in the settings, right? If you check in the settings, deploy, before settings, deploy. This is how it will partition access resources. This is how it will partition. See, I have not configured my application for Postgres, but Heroku by default, it does configures space for Postgres by default. So that is one of another good thing about Heroku. By default, it does certain things for you to deploy the Python Django application with the Postgres database. And yeah, here I have linked my local repository to the Heroku Git, but you can also you can check in your code to the GitHub, and GitHub you can link it for deployment. This is how we get instructions. If you want to directly link your repositories to the Heroku Git, and this is how you would do. It will give you the link, right? And settings. Here it will help you know certain configurations, and also which build pack you have used for the deployment. And this is the URL of your application. All these configurations it will give you under settings tab. Any other questions? Yeah. And hope you got the link for the presentation if you're interested to go through it. Let's post it once again. Yeah. Feel free to connect if you have any deployment thing you need help with. I'm happy to help you. Thank you everyone for attending the session. Hope I added some value here. Thank you once again.